我想请盛吉先生聊一聊，我知道你当年曾经10次来跟南老师在一起去学习、去交流西方的管理智慧，西方的这种系统组织动力学和东方的生命智慧之间的这个交流。今天经过了这么多年之后，你再来反思当年你们的交流，你觉得当时你学到了什么？
And I think that the whole experience I had as a student of Master Nan's is also part of my kind of life journey of understanding traditional wisdom in Eastern cultures. When I was a kid growing up in Los Angeles, my best friend was Japanese. So I spent a lot of time in a Japanese household. So I always felt kind of drawn. This is the karmic part. I always felt kind of comfortable in the Eastern Asian cultural setting. And probably in my 20s, sometime when I was quite young, I just one day had this idea, just hit me that, oh, second half of your life, you'll spend much of your time in China and India. I had no idea where that came from, just there it was. Master Nan was a great teacher for me because on the one hand, he was very, very serious about practice, but he also had this extraordinary understanding of all the traditions, the wisdom traditions of China, the Taoist, the Buddhist, the Confucian. He was really a master in all. So a lot of people, of course, who know him from his books consider him a great scholar because he wrote so much. And a lot of his books are really very difficult to understand. And I realized through that, these are real traps, subtle traps. You know, something amazing happens in your meditation and you experience infinity or light pours out of you. That you then start to get attached to these experiences. But they're just, you know, the ups and downs, you know, the illusory nature of experience. When you're around a real master who's grounded in that, it really helps. And my experience of it is just the lightness, the extraordinary lightness, like nothing is heavy.
我一定要把你的话转达给我几个打坐的时候见到如来佛祖的朋友。
Yeah, yeah. The first major retreat we had was 1997, and Master Nan organized a week-long retreat. And about the third or fourth night, he says, let's do joke night tonight. So the entire night was just jokes, people telling jokes. Very hard to translate jokes. So we would just watch all these people just laughing and laughing and didn't really always understand, but it was clear they were really good jokes. So I think people often get very heavy. And if you think about it, the fundamental core premise in all cultivation traditions is you're coming closer and closer to your original nature. By the way, on joke night, Master Nan told all the really dirty jokes. We had two ladies who were translating, and after a while they refused to translate anymore. They said, these jokes are too dirty, we can't translate.
也许南师是用这种方法来帮助我们放下。
The real cultivation process is a letting go. It's kind of like taking your clothes off. So you get closer and closer to who you really are. And they're busy putting on lots of robes, big robes, fancy robes, expensive robes. It's really the opposite. It's easy, and it's complicated. Because, of course, as you cultivate, you really do have different experiences. So the real danger is you're actually being successful to a degree. So using Buddhist terms, you're starting to actually realize some levels of samadhi. And you look at these people there and you say, well, they can't do that, and I can. And that's the trap. It's who's the I. So at the heart of all arrogance is a confusion about the self. As I think about that, to me what really matters is a community. So we can realize that there's many, many forms of cultivation. And it's not about me. It's more than just me. It's really, I can start to see that this person has this kind of cultivation, this person has this sort of cultivation. So you start to feel that you're really part of something that's bigger than you. Master Nan felt very strongly about this. In the 1960s, he formed an East-West cultural mutual learning society. He really believed the potential path for humans in the future would be a synthesis of ancient wisdom traditions and actually modern science. So on the one hand, it's very encouraging for me. I find it tremendously encouraging in general that there is awakening in China to China's great cultural traditions. But on the other hand, I also think there's something to be concerned about. Amongst Master Nan's students, we used to often call it Han chauvinism. It really that the Chinese culture is the great culture of the world. It's another manifestation of the insecurity. It's a little bit like we were talking about before about cultivation. The really secure culture is continually letting go. And if we go back to what we were talking about earlier, kind of this defining moment for human beings is, can we actually live together? I believe China has a very important contribution, but it's not just becoming the China of 2,000 years ago. It's something different.
也许呢，如果我们只有一个问题的话呢，我们想请问您如何在宇宙当中定位自己？
As you can tell, kind of the characteristics of my persona, my karmic inheritance is I get very excited about the work and the changes and the kids and the schools, and thinking about leadership. I don't really think much about myself. And the difficulty is I really feel so grounded in profound uncertainty. The image is a teacher, so I guess I'm a teacher of uncertainty.
我的理解是，像一个几乎接近于无我的人去问你是谁，本身就是一个荒诞的问题。
Who wants to know?
好的，今天呢，我们是度过了极其幸运的一天。我觉得这是生命馈赠给我最美好的礼物，让我呢能够有这么长的机会，在酝酿了9年之后，终于有机会向这个地球上我最尊敬的其中一位老师彼得森迪老师呢，请教了许许多多关于生命、关于成长、关于灵魂、关于组织、关于领导力的问题。其实这些问题的最终的核心都是一件事情，就是你是否相信你是有天命的，你是否相信你愿意依照你内心的那个天命去为这个世界变得更好做一些更多的努力。
One last story. We've had the privilege to do some very serious projects with Native American leaders. In one of these projects, one of the elders was asked in a dialogue. So the person asked him, and the person was a white, a Eurocentric person. He said, "So what's the role of all the world's peoples?" And the elder answered very quickly. He said, "The black people sang the world into existence. They are the creative force. The yellow people, which is their traditional way of talking about the Asians, the yellow people, their job is the integration of mind and body. The brown people, which is the way they always refer to the indigenous or native people, the brown people, their job is the integration of human and nature." So the person asking the question, who's American, so the elder looked at him and said, "Your job is to bring them all together." So I think that the different peoples of the world all have a critical role to play. And eventually, this cycle of getting us out of the predicament we're in will only be starting to work when all the peoples are playing their part. It'll probably take a few decades, but this decade is really important to get the process started. And I do believe the West-China partnership will be the first critical one.